The amendment that I have just offered to the Defense Authorization Bill is an amendment that Senator Reid from Rhode Island is joining me in sponsoring. And the amendment itself would allow the Air Force to reduce its strategic airlift aircraft inventory to what they need to meet our readiness needs. And it would save $1.2 billion of taxpayer money in the next few years without compromising the readiness that we need to protect our nation. Our nation's strategic airlift fleet provides global air mobility to the United States military. As General Raymond Johns, commander of the Air Force Air Mobility Command, said in his statement before a hearing before the Armed Services Readiness Subcommittee, before the Armed Services Committee, when we had this amendment addressed, he said the strategic airlift is a national asset, allowing America to deliver hope, to fuel the fight, and to save lives anywhere in the world within hours of getting the call. In order to meet this need, the United States uses C-5 and C-17s as their strategic airlift capability, and current federal law sets the Air Force's minimum number of strategic airlift aircraft at 316. However, the Air Force and the administration, when they submitted the Department of Defense submitted their budget request, made very clear that we don't need to keep the minimum requirement at 316 to meet the needs of our country, that only a minimum requirement of 301 aircraft are needed to meet the strategic airlift capacity requirements of our country. The requirement to maintain the bottom line limit of 316 is a situation where Congress is requiring the Air Force to maintain planes that it does not need to protect the readiness of our country. And so it was the Air Force that wanted this amendment to be brought forward to ensure that we could save taxpayer dollars, over $1 billion. This is very important at a time when we are asking our military, as a result of the Budget Control Act, over the next 10 years to reduce spending by close to $450 billion. As I will say that we had a full hearing and a subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee on the strategic airlift aircraft requirement, and the military testified uniformly that reducing the number of the strategic airlift from 316 to 301 would put us in a very strong position to meet every contingency that we can anticipate going forward, including multiple contingencies around the world as well as homeland events. So this is an area that's been studied very, very carefully, will allow us to continue to protect our country, but will again save $1.2 billion in taxpayer money.
Is it true that the United States Air Force not only supports this, but I think it's one of their very high priorities? Is that correct?
Yes, Senator McCain. This is a very high priority of the Air Force because in this difficult time when they are making reductions, this is an area where they can meet our national security needs, but Congress has actually asked the Air Force to maintain more planes than it needs. So this is a common sense provision and is very important to our Air Force.
In these times of very difficult decisions have to be made, budgetary decisions, isn't it true also that the President's budget in 2011 had included a plan to retire 17 C-5As in 2011 and 5 in 2012?
Yes, Senator McCain. Actually, what this amendment that I'm bringing forward is consistent with the administration's budget request that they submitted for the consideration of Congress. And so really this is a situation where, after a careful hearing that we had in the subcommittee before the Armed Services Committee, after the administration has submitted this request, after the Air Force has asked for it, it makes complete sense that we would allow them to reduce this strategic airlift capacity.
And could I ask, really no state that these aircraft are presently stationed in would lose that mission, that the older C-5s would convert to new C-17s. Is that pretty much a conclusion you would draw from the Air Force's planning?
That's certainly my understanding of it, Senator McCain. This is not going to be a diminishment for states. This is just going to be a right-sizing of the fleet, which what I'm concerned about is if we don't pass amendments like this, where the administration's asked for it, where all of the data supports that we don't need to keep the level at 316, where we can save $1.2 billion by doing it, how can we then ask our military to make significant reductions if we don't allow them to do common sense things like this?